let us go back to the War Games, first
Yes.
of all. It's 1969.
Long time ago.
Jane, you're in a Brighton rubbish dump, freezing cold. How was that?
It wasn't that cold.
Wasn't it?
No,
Okay.
not really, no.
Just a bit grim?
No, it was lovely. Charming. I mean, there was nobody else there except us. And a few explosions. You know, yeah.
And the ambulance.
And the ambulance.
And the ambulance.
Yes.
And Terence, you were completely in studio for the War Games.
Yes. Ealing, I suppose, was it? Yeah, I think so.
No, I think
Well, I mean, he was much more superior, you see. He was a superior officer. So he was in a superior office.
That's right, rightly so.
Yeah.
So it's been like that since. Very lucky.
And Terence, how did you get into Doctor Who? Because it was your second appearance after your appearance in the plastic strings and pants and flip-flops in the Ark.
Yeah.
How did that come about?
Well, I suppose I think I'd worked for the director David Maloney before in Ivanhoe, the series of Ivanhoe, and I was in that, and I think at those days it was much easier. You didn't have to go and audition for 10 people or something. You'd see somebody in the BBC club, and they'd say, "Hello, what are you doing? Would you like to do a little part?" And I'd say, "Yes, of course," and do it. Really, I don't think it was a very elaborate selection procedure. I had played quite a lot of soldiers in those days, but in the West End and so on.
Right.
You sort of get on it. He does that sort of thing, and he plays soldiers.
He plays soldiers, yes.
Yes, you see? That's it, yes.
And for you've worked with Hartnell and Troughton.
That's right.
What were how did they compare with each other in terms of?
Well, I so admired them both. They were marvellous, experienced, clever, versatile people. I think Mr. Hartnell, he was like really a kindly grandfather, do you know, almost, because so much older than the kids. And Patrick Troughton was like a sort of a naughty uncle, really. He was sort of, wasn't he, a little bit of a tease and jokes and that. He was a different personality. They were both marvellous. I think Mr. Hartnell had been in review and comedy and all sorts of things, but he very versatile actor, and people sort of think of him as this elderly chap, but I mean, he was a lively musical theatre person at one time, I believe. And as I say, both charming people, I think, and clever people.
Everybody talks about Doctor Who being a very welcoming environment as an actor if you're coming into the show. Was that your experience?
Oh, yeah. But then, I mean, most actors, because you are with somebody and have to play their wife or their husband so immediately, actors always get on, except if they don't. But, you know, on the whole, actors are a very welcoming breed. You know, they do get on very well together.
By necessity, I suppose you have to be.
Because if you don't, what's going to happen to the show? The show must go on. Yes, so that's what you do.
And was the War Games a lot of fun for
Yes,
you?
great fun. Great fun.
Yes, well,
You had a more boring part
you
than
had
me,
that
didn't
fresh
you?
air and the rubbish dump
Yes,
and all
quite.
that sort of thing. I mean, I was just sitting in a boring studio.
Yes, quite. No, I had a lovely time.
Do you have any particular memories of the stories, or even of your first story, either Terence?
Not really.
A long time.
It was
a long time ago.
Long time ago.
Yes.
Where does Doctor Who fit in when you look back on your careers? How does it? Is it a highlight, or is it something that was?
Well, for me, it was a change of name, because I did have a long career. Somebody called Jane Parsons, and then when I appeared in my husband's production, I decided, because in case somebody said, "Oh, do you happen to know Derek Sherwin?" I would say, "Yes, I do. I happen to be his wife." You know, and have it up front, and so it wouldn't be embarrassing. Because I've been in situations where it's been very embarrassing.
Right.
So.
I was going to say, was there any time? Because I know people can get quite prickly, don't they? If you think, you know, you're with the production team, if you're married to somebody in the production team, it can often put people on edge, maybe. So.
Well, yeah. Well, that's why it's best to be upfront about it, as opposed to they suddenly find out, oh dear. So yeah, upfront.
And what do you think? Why do you think we're still here today talking about Doctor Who?
I suppose because it was a cracking good story. I mean, I am surprised it's, because it did sort of go at one point, didn't it?
Mm.
But, I mean, the present lot are fantastic. Mark, they have got money coming out of their ears.
Mm.
I mean, I don't know what the actual money is, but more is spent on one episode than was spent, I would imagine, on the whole year of Doctor Who when we were in it.
At least, I think.
Yes,
I think,
yes. Mainly black drapes, actually.
Yeah.
Apart from bright rubbish stuff, which of course was of the elite.
Does anybody have any questions for Jane or Terence? Anybody? The corner.
Terence, do you have any memories of working on Harry Potter?
With your
Harry
memories
Potter's
of Harry
No,
Potter.
well, it was, thank God, marvellously paid. But I mean, I just flitted across, and somebody said, "It's the bloody Baron," and that was it. But luckily, because not only the scripts hadn't been written at the time, but the books hadn't been written at that time. So he's mentioned featured strongly in the first book, as a character. And of course, he never says anything at all. I think Harry Potter impersonates his voice in one of the books, but that's about it. But luckily, they had this big, strong contract saying, "Okay, you've got to be free for every future episode, and money will increase, and you will get this tiny, tiny percentage." But because it was such a success, it was about £80,000, I think, so far, with residuals for a week's work, just flying across.
Oh, lovely.
It was all right, wasn't it?
Nice work, if you can get it.
Yes. I've just come along here for charity, really. Didn't need to be here, guys, at all.
There was another in the corner.
It's another for Terence. I was just wondering what your memories are as being legging out Batman in the Rutlands.
Oh, I loved that. I worked a lot with the Pythons. Yes, I did that with Eric Idle. First of all, I knew Eric personally. And luckily, I was I think, doing a music hall in a pub or something. And Eric turned up with his wife, Lynn Ashley, and he said, "I didn't think you were funny." I said, "Well, you're quite funny." And so first he asked me to be in a commercial with him, and then he asked me to be in Rutland Weekend Television. And then he asked me to play Lady Mountbatten in the Ruttles, and then I did a West End play of his called Pass the Butler. So that was good fun. I don't see them much now. So I see, of course, Eric's mostly in America. I see Terry Gilliam quite a lot, and I think he's a brilliant man. Of course, I did after all for Terry. I did Time Bandits, and of course, I did Life of Brian for some other member of the Python team, I forget. No, Terry Jones, of course. So, no, I loved that. That was great fun.
Was somebody else?
When you were both working on the War Games, how conscious were you of it being the end of an era? Was that apparent, or did you just feel...
No, we didn't know it was the end of an era.
No.
We just, it was that story, and we were in the story, But no, we didn't even I didn't realise that this was the last of the black and white. In fact, I had no idea. I mean, yes, my small children at home were watching. Blue Peter was one of the first things I seem to remember that was on in colour. So they were watching in colour. So I knew it was possible, but I prefer it in black and white anyhow.
Makes it feel a little more expensive. Was it because it was Patrick's last story? In fact, it was the regulars' last story. How was?
Yeah.
Was there a sense that they were winding down, or they come to the end?
So no, because I don't know that I was aware that it was the last thing. I mean, so they certainly weren't, going on about it in any way.
Mm.
So no, and they were a very relaxing team to be with anyhow, especially Wendy.
Right.
Yeah, charming.
Anybody else? Now, Jane, I understand you have a new career
Yes.
as a fledgling rap artist. And I understand you have your magnus opus with you today. So, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to introduce to you, for the first time, public performance by MC Granny Gaga.
I'm going to stand up, because You can't do poetry sitting down, sorry. Right, now this was written for a friend of mine who was 88 last year, and at the same time I was 77, so this is for Joan, aged 88, from Jane, aged 77, Granny Rap. At 88 you don't vegetate, for it ain't too late to agitate and fulminate against oppression. Just an impression, but getting older and maybe bolder, broader shoulder for to cry on and rely on. This granny, she say, think about that. At 88, she get high on joy of living, joy of giving and forgiving. Chitter, chatter, nitter, natter, all those things don't really matter. Now's to scatter love and laughter ever after. Yeah, 88, not too late to contemplate that ever after love and laughter in the high place in God good grace. But not just yet, Joan, hedge your bet, Joan, hang on in a little longer. Your reputation getting stronger. You alone is in the zone, so rah for Joan.
Hey.
How long have you been writing your poetry?
Since I was 9 years old.
Right. And did you, as your love of it increased, or?
Yes, because now I've got more time. I've spent all my life looking after other people, really, and now it's me time. And me is doing the rap. No, actually, this is the only rap I've done. I do fairly serious poetry as well. I do both serious and not serious poetry. There's some sort of philosophical poetry that comes to you, the first draft, when you're sitting there, standing there, waiting for the potatoes to boil for supper, you know, slightly pissed, and the first thing comes to you. And those are usually funny poems. But there are serious ones as well. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Good. Well, thank you. Thank you for that.
Not at all.
Does anybody have any last questions for Terence and Jane? Yes.
Well, for Jane then, favourite poets?
Sorry?
Who's your favourite poet?
poet?
My favourite poet, well, I mean, when I was an adolescent, it was Rupert Brooke. So that fits in rather well with the First World War. But now, I suppose, well, I wanted to be the first female poet laureate, and I became an actress instead, and I think Carol Ann Duffy has done very well as the first female poet laureate. So, for the moment, Carol Ann Duffy.
Anybody else? Well, once again, time has beaten us. I'm very sorry, short and sweet. So please put your hands together for Jane Sherwin.